Save the Children International is among the world's leading organizations that help uphold children's rights in over 100 countries. The group has been in the Philippines for over 30 years. The organization's chief executive officer, Jasmine Whitbread, is one of BBC's 100 most powerful women in the United Kingdom in 2013. And she's here with us in the studio to discuss with us the organization's aid to typhoon victims in the Visayas, particularly those struck by Yolanda. So Jasmine, good morning and welcome to Solar Daybreak.
Thank you very much.
It is a pleasure to have you with us, and congratulations on being chosen as one of the 100 most powerful women in UK in 2013. How does that impact also? I'm sure it's an affirmation as well on the efforts of Save the Children in all these countries that you've helped support.
Well, any opportunity to kind of raise the profile of Save the Children and the work that we do is always a good opportunity.
And I understand that just yesterday you were able to visit Yolanda hit areas, particularly in Tacloban, so you were able to see it firsthand. Save the Children was one of the first organizations to be there, and as early as November, you've been giving already aid and support, particularly to children. What were your observations?
Well, I remember hearing at the time when I was in the UK, we actually pre-positioned some of our staff from our office here in Manila, moved out and were ready to be able to respond from day one after the storm hit. And I remember hearing and getting the reports back from them and looking at the pictures of devastation. And really what struck me yesterday is the incredible progress that's been made, the extraordinary resilience of the Filipinos that I met. The communities have really pulled together, and it's very impressive.
Well, that's good to hear, because before, when this all started, we were hearing stories about children being displaced, getting sick in all these centers because there's not really a good place for them that is safe. But Save the Children, as you've said, has been giving support. What were these, ma'am, particularly for the children?
Well, it is always a concern in any emergency around the world. The children are usually end up being kind of some of the most vulnerable and the worst victims of these kinds of disasters. And so that's our focus, and what we always look at is kind of life-saving support in the early days. So our team got out there. First of all, there was no stocks available actually in the area because they'd all been devastated, so we were flying in stocks from around the world. So this is life-saving kind of hygiene kits, water kits, tarpaulings, so that people have some shelter. Babies continue to get born in these emergencies. I think there was an estimate that 12,000 babies were born in the first 3 weeks after the typhoon struck. And so we were distributing baby kits, things that the mothers need to look after their little newborns. So that's really important in the first phase. And then what we do now, we've started to work, and this is what I was saying yesterday, into the recovery phase. It's about getting children back into school, into a safe place, making sure that children are very resilient. So given a bit of a chance, they can recover from this, even the kind of trauma that they've been through.
One of the things that has been identified by your organization is the importance of immediately setting up a system, particularly for children after every disaster. Based on your experience, why is that very important, and how significant is that in early recovery?
Well, like I say, children are very resilient and they can recover, and usually there's a wider family and the children are taken care of even if they have tragically lost a family member. In every circumstance here in the Philippines, we find that the wider family is there for the children. Recovery is possible, but only if there are some places for the children, whether it's getting back into school, which we try to see. We've been supporting the government's efforts to get everybody back into school. I think we've seen attendance rates get back up into the 70, 80, 90%. We need to get that to happen. We know that every day that a child is out of school, it increases their likelihood of dropping out completely or not recovering. But also child-friendly spaces where children can go and play. I was visited some of those myself, singing and dancing with the children, and it just helps them kind of overcome and realize that life can get back to normal.
Now, one of the highlights of your program in Save the Children is to actually talk to the children, to get feedback directly from them. What did they tell you? What were their thoughts?
Yes, we always do that, and we're actually using the opportunity of this 3-month kind of period now, and with the launch of our report, really reporting back what children have told us. It's called See Me, Ask Me, Hear Me.
Okay.
Because often children are kind of not really listened to. They're there, but people don't think to ask them, what are your ideas? And it's very important to do, and particularly in some of these communities where, as you know, often the older children are actually playing a very important caring role for the younger children.
Yes.
And so not only is it important for themselves, but it also enables them to help look after the family. And what these children have been telling us is that they would like to know more about these typhoons, these storms. All these technical terms are used, magnitude, surge, and they want to know, what does this all mean? They want to be told, they want to learn this kind of thing in school. And they also have recommendations about the evacuation centres that many of them went to. Because,
what did they say?
Well, they say, that more care should be taken and planning should be in place, and that they want to be part of this to make sure that those centres really are safe and that are set up for children to allow, for example, girls to have some privacy, to make sure that they're not just evacuating from an unsafe place to another unsafe place, but they are safe when they get there. And then they also talk about the need to get back into school. So it's really interesting to actually listen to what children have to say, and that's what we want to do, is respond to what they're recommending, and we commit to do that to save the children, but we're also making recommendations to other actors and to the government. I think there's lots to be learned from what these children have to say.
Yes, I understand that you've made an initial assessment somehow for after the first 3 months after the typhoon struck. How can we improve? Has the Philippines done enough in particularly protecting and securing children in particular in this particular situation?
Well, it is, as I say, about really listening to what they have to say, and they're saying, the evacuation centres, more planning and preparation to make sure that those are safe, more education of children and young people about what these storms are about, because we know that the Philippines is very prone to these weather systems. They want to be they don't want to be seen as just victims, they want to be part of preparing for and responding to, because they are often in a position of responsibility. And they want to ensure that education is prioritised. I mean, 90% of the schools where I visited yesterday were affected by the storm.
Yes.
We visited one school that had 50 classrooms normally, and the headmistress told us that only 7 classrooms were usable now. So they, they were using tents, they were doing shifts so that, different ages were coming in at different times. It was very hot, they were very crowded. And what we're trying to do is make sure that there are temporary spaces available out of the sun where children can carry on learning until we will support the efforts to build back better in the longer term. But that takes time. So you've got to allow that period. You've got to make sure that in the intervening period, children can still get a decent education.
Now, you talked about also talking to other stakeholders in this particular situation. What are the efforts now of Save the Children to get everybody helping in this rebuilding phase in Tacloban?
Well, it's been quite encouraging to see, actually, across the Save the Children family around the world. I've been here as part of a delegation from Sweden to India to Australia. All the different parts of Save the Children have contributed to the response here. But really encouragingly, this is the first time that we've actually done an appeal here in the Philippines. And we've seen people be very generous to that as well. And we think that there is more that we can be doing actually in terms of our presence here in the Philippines, not just programming, but actually reaching out and working with companies and with the communities in the Philippines who actually do want to respond in these circumstances.
And lastly, the children has been identified as also one of the important aspects of helping out, because they can play a role and they have a responsibility as well in this rebuilding phase. So what do you see so far? Are we getting there? Do we see that happening? Are we able to do that, achieve that now?
I think we're seeing great examples. I saw some examples yesterday where, we have, there was a teenager that I met who explained how he was helping to look after his younger siblings, providing a bit of comfort to his mother who had a newborn and was, clearly quite traumatized from the experience. So there are great examples, where local leaders also are listening to what children have to say. In terms of the rebuilding, there was an example of where children are making recommendations about where they would like to see a kind of a play area for children, and how that might be able to provide a bit of a focus for the community as it builds back. But there are also still many examples of where children are not listened to, where they are sort of really, people think, well, why should we ask the children? Let's ask the adults.
Exactly.
They will know better. But what these children are saying is, you adults, you don't always know better. You planned evacuation centres that we could have told you weren't going to be safe. So, listen to children. That's my message.
Well, thank you so much. And how can we help, Jasmine?
So you can go onto our website, typhoonyearlandappeal.com, and contribute. That would be great.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and welcome to the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much.